So, welcome everyone. This week's topic, or today's topic, is so-called Four Noble Truths. As one of the first teachings the Buddha has given, this is always something that's very, very important to frequently contemplate on many levels. Like every teachings, every books that you read and so forth, and should always be contemplated deeply. It's not so much about accumulating vast amounts of information, receiving new teachings every week. It is more about hearing the deeper layers in every teaching that you receive throughout the time that you cultivate your practice. Now, for example, if you go back home and you're cultivating your meditative skills, you will hear differences in every teaching and you will understand those teachings on a deeper level. That is very, very important to understand. First of all, so many of you might have heard already the teachings about the Four Noble Truths. You might think, oh, well, I know that already, I've read about this. This kind of attitude is not very helpful on your spiritual path. It will not lead to progress. Rather, your insight and your knowledge should come directly from experiencing those teachings, that rather than listening to them and kind of get an intellectual understanding of them. Intellectual understanding is already great. If things start to make sense to you, it's very, very good already, but it has to deepen from that point onwards. It's like a vertical path. It goes into the depth. It doesn't go into the broadness, or how you say, width. It doesn't go in that direction. So these Four Noble Truths are the Noble Truth of suffering, or dukkha, the Noble Truth of the origin or cause of suffering, the Noble Truth of the end of suffering, and the Noble Truth of the path leading to the end of suffering. So these Four Noble Truths are also the first discourse or the first teachings the Buddha has given. He basically started off with the unpleasant fact that there is suffering, that there is discomfort in our being. And this is something that is quite undeniable. If you really watch yourself, you sit down somewhere and you look at yourself, then you will notice that there is discomfort and suffering in the body, that there is discomfort and suffering in the mind. That is true for all beings on this planet. In fact, it is at the root of all our movements, is this unsatisfied state of body and mind. We're continuously trying to improve, to get better, to feel different feelings, to become a different person and so forth. All that would not be necessary if everything was fine. Does that make sense? So that kind of shows the underlying sense of lack that really moves us, that gives rise to shopping malls, gives rise to you going to the beach, seeking out the sunlight. And once you're in the sunlight, you will seek out the shadow. Once you're in the shadow, you will seek out the 7-Eleven. Once you're in 7-Eleven, you will seek out the next stop, the next stop, the next stop. It's constantly moving onwards, forwards. Now this is okay, this is just part of life, it's the way it is. But there's something that moves us, and it is suffering, it is discomfort. And this is not something that you should accept when I'm telling you that. Like, oh, okay, all right, so, okay, I don't know if I can accept that, or I don't know if I can believe in this, or that's quite pessimistic. But you want to understand through seeing this inside of yourself. If you observe yourself honestly, then you will notice a tendency to get away from the present moment. It's constantly there. It expresses itself as boredom, waiting, looking forward, trying, struggling, surviving, and so forth. That's how it is expressed. But at the root of all action, there is a certain amount of pain, a certain amount of discomfort. Now the Buddha calls that dukkha. Dukkha is something that is hard to bear, often translated as suffering. That which is hard to bear, that which is unpleasant. This is the first noble truth. The first fact that the Buddha has discovered. Not made up, not created, but he has discovered that through observing himself. There's discomfort. I sit down here and I sit and I notice there's continuous discomfort arising in the body, for example. Is that something that is true, or is it not true? Is the body continuously getting more comfortable? Like you just only sit down and then from that moment on the body gets more and more comfortable. No, right? It's not the case. The opposite is the case. It becomes more uncomfortable. How about the mind? Is the mind continuously getting more happy as you sit? If you don't need to do anything, you just sit down and happiness just grows and grows and grows. You become continuously more and more happy. All you need to do is just sit down and there it is. Happiness. For free. No need to do anything. It's true like this? Is it like this? Is your experience like this? Yeah, no one's experience in this world is like this. No animal, no human being, no spirit. There's no experience like that. Like a gradual improvement, just like that. Life is not this linear kind of thing. Rather, what you will notice if you observe, that things change. And sometimes you feel great. Wow, that's it. I think I did it. And then 10 minutes later you feel horrible. And then again 10 minutes later you feel totally blissed out. And 20 minutes later you're hungry. Changes all the time. Continuously changes. Your feelings are unstable. Your thoughts are unstable. They don't stay. Everything flows. Like this. Now this is the first type of suffering. It's called the suffering of change. Sorry, I made a mistake. The first type of suffering is the so-called suffering of suffering, as the general fact that there is unpleasant stuff going on. Undeniable. Turn on the news if you don't believe me. Read a newspaper if you don't believe me. There's lots of unpleasant stuff going on. Look at your own life, your past. Have you made unpleasant experiences so far? Anyone? Yeah? Yeah. Well, there's no one who did not make unpleasant experiences. Those unpleasant experiences are normal, right? Maybe you made some unpleasant experiences just in the past 20 minutes as we were sitting. Oh, it's part of life, unpleasant experiences. That's the first type of suffering. It's unavoidable. Unpleasant experiences are part of the past and they are part of the future. And they're part of the present. The second is the so-called suffering of change. Now the suffering of change means that the pleasant experiences that we are having don't last. That's the suffering of change. That's the problem with pleasant experiences. None of them lasts. A great relationship doesn't stay a great relationship all the time. In the beginning often it's a great relationship and then slowly it becomes a normal relationship. And that's okay. That's the way things are, right? You eat a wonderful meal and then you feel, wow, this tastes great. But the great taste doesn't stay great. You keep eating. Becomes normal, and eventually becomes pain if you just stay and you just keep eating. Even if it's very delicious in the beginning, it doesn't stay delicious. Even the most pleasant things of life. Sex. Think of sex. Imagine having it for 10 hours straight. It becomes torture. Unbearable. And we need to rest. Like this. It's this continuous up and down, up and down. So the great stuff of life doesn't stay the great stuff of life. Very, very often, in fact, the great stuff of life turns into the next problem. Like the marriage turning into a divorce. When we get married, then there is this great celebration, and we might even skydive and then exchange rings in the air and all that kind of fancy stuff. But we don't do that stuff when we get divorced, right? We're not skydiving for the celebration of our divorce. Maybe some people do that. I don't know, but usually divorces are a bit more quiet, a bit more hidden, But look at people when they get married; they're so happy. Looks like from now on life is settled. Things are done. I'm done, and they were happy ever after. It feels like this, but it's not true. There are problems ahead for those people who are unwilling to face that fact. They suffer a lot. They say, "Oh, I should not have problems," but problems are part of life. Trouble is part of life. It is perfectly normal. Like growing old is part of life. It's normal. Dying is part of life. It's normal. Nothing bad about it, actually. But still, we have to put up with these kind of rather unpleasant things also all the time. So if you look back at your life so far, then you will notice change. Sometimes you were going like, yes, I did it. And then again, oh, no. A few weeks later, yeah. This will never stop. This will be like this until you die. There'll be great, fantastic moments and terrible moments. Because it's life. Life is like this. Breathing in, breathing out. The third type of suffering is the so-called suffering of the clinging aggregates. It's a bit of a complicated term, but really it means our attachment to body and mind. The sense of being identified with body and mind, feeling that I am this body, I am this mind, which both is not true. It leads to a whole lot of suffering. The belief that I am a male, I am a female, means I'm identified with this body, with this very temporary thing. I'm an intellectual, I am right, I am wrong. I identify with the mind, also temporary stuff. It's not according to ultimate truth. And we suffer because we hold on to stuff that comes and goes. And we believe that we are the stuff that comes and goes. Well, that's the cause of suffering, which is the second noble truth. Like any skilled physician or doctor, the Buddha also said, here is the trouble, here's the problem, and that's where it comes from. It would be incomplete if he just says, all right, guys, there's a problem. And then that's it. That would be very depressing. What kind of a spiritual teaching would that be, right? Someone just telling you, here is suffering, and that's it. But he found out and clearly identified, where does it come from? And he identified two parents of suffering. So what are the parents of suffering? The parents of suffering are ignorance and craving. These two. Whereas ignorance is very powerful. is more powerful than craving. Because craving is dependent on ignorance. So the very first root cause of suffering is ignorance, not knowing who you really are. We think superficially, we like to think that we know who we are. And you ask anyone on the street, who are you? And they will tell you some story. On Thursday they tell you this story, on Wednesday they tell you another story. So they believe they are this walking story. But that's not true. Maybe what is more true is that you are not a story, that you are not a body, but you are presence. You are beingness. But we are confused with the doing. We think we are the doer, the one that does things, the one that lives the life. We don't feel like we are life. We feel like we are that does life, that makes life happen. And if I say it like this, you will quickly find out it sounds kind of weird. Am I really the one that does life? How arrogant. Life. Feeling as the owner of life. Feeling as the doer of life. Feeling like I am here and the universe is there. All these kind of things, they are the result of ignorance. We don't really understand who we are. Like a dreamer doesn't know that he or she is dreaming. That is ignorance. So the dream works. And it feels real until you wake up. And once you wake up, you go, oh, it's just a dream. And all the millions of problems you can experience in a dream, they find an end altogether at once when you wake up. And all the millions of problems we experience in life as the human race, as an individual being, they all find their end when you understand. Not intellectually, but directly from experience. When you truly see your own face. That is the third noble truth, the end of suffering. So the first noble truth is suffering. The second one is the cause of suffering. The third one is the end of suffering. Like a skilled physician, like a good doctor, we don't just stick to, well, here's the problem, here's its cause, but we also want to give a good diagnosis, right? Like, there is hope. You can be healed. And what is this diagnosis? What is this healing? What does it mean to heal? That's described in the third noble truth. Healing means that there is no more craving, no more ignorance. You truly understand what is true and what is fake. What is created, what is uncreated. What is conditioned and what is unconditioned. What is dying and what is deathless. You will truly understand this one. You enter the third noble truth, the end of suffering. The fourth noble truth is the path leading to the end of suffering. It is a step-by-step method that the Buddha has laid down, where he showed that what is there to be done, what is there to be not to be done, so that we arrive at that same conclusion, or the same insight, the same knowledge. So this fourth noble truth, the path, can be structured into 3 trainings. That's the most simple structure. 3 things to do. Cultivate your lifestyle. Make your mind still. And penetrate through to truth by using insight meditation. Or even shorter, samatha and vipassana. You practice calm abiding, which is the meditation to still the mind, to empower the knower, to empower the mind, and then use that empowered mind to understand yourself, to understand itself. So the mind can understand itself. It can taste itself. So this end of suffering is then called enlightenment. It's like a play of words. It doesn't have to mean the luminous enlightenment, but also can mean that it is something that makes you more light, less heavy, less serious. You're unburdened because you learn how to let go. So all those 4 Noble Truths, in all their details, all their explanations, there's so many explanations about them. You could talk about them for hours and hours. But they're all summarized in one sentence by the Buddha as nothing whatsoever should be clung to. Nothing whatsoever should be clung to. Hold nothing. This is the path to peace. As soon as you're holding, there's tension. So whatever arises in your experiencing, as soon as you hold, it means you become it. Let's say anger passes through your being. You don't have to become it. You don't have to get born into anger. Because once you're born, you suffer illness, old age, and death. You suffer the consequences of your birth as soon as you're born into a state, whatever state that is. Whether it is your body, or anger, or frustration, or any emotion, or any thought. Like the thought, I'm a meditation teacher. If I get born into that thought, then I will suffer the consequences of being a meditation teacher. One of those consequences would be that I'm not a student, because I'm a meditation teacher. So what happens when I'm around my teacher? Then I feel like a fake. I feel like a pretense. Because I can't sustain the idea that I'm a meditation teacher around my teacher. Because around my teacher I become a student. So what am I? Am I a teacher, or am I a student, or am I Tobi, or what am I? The answer is, it's continuously changing. So I must be something that is beyond that change. Because the meditation teacher comes and goes, the student comes and goes. But something is always here. And it is none of that stuff that comes and goes. So this open space of your being, that is continuously invaded by stuff. All kinds of stuff. Thoughts, opinions. I'm a Buddhist. I'm a Christian. This kind of stuff, it comes up in your being. There is these ideas are coming up continuously. So what do we do here? Well, nothing. Just leave them alone. Leave those ideas alone. Leave those thoughts alone. Don't touch them. As soon as you're getting born into one of those thoughts or those ideas, you suffer this particular consequence. I am this, I am that. Then we have to carry it, and it's heavy. And it is not only heavy, but it is limiting. Every thought you're identified with blocks out everything else. You're limited to just one facet of experience. You're not an unlimited being anymore. You're totally limited. Whatever it is that you believe to be, it is a limitation. It is making you unfree. It ties you up. It binds you to one particular thing. And if that thing goes up, you'll be very happy. If the thing goes down, you'll be very sad. And it will go up and it will go down. That's for sure. So why tie ourselves up to anything? Why stick to anything? The answer is because we, at the moment, have no choice. We kind of have to stick to things. But why? Because there is no mindfulness. We are hardly ever aware of what goes on in our mind throughout the entire day. Most of the time during the day, we are busy just functioning according to our programs. Someone says hi, you say hi. Someone says, how are you? You say good. You see something negative, you feel sad. See something positive, you feel happy. It just works like this, but you never know it. You never see what goes on. So that mindfulness is the crucial factor, which is the starting, the entry gate to practice. And it is also the highest type of practice. To cultivate mindfulness, to become aware, to train your skill in seeing yourself, which is admittedly the most difficult thing on this planet, to see yourself. It's as difficult as asking you to look at your own face right now. You can't see your own face. You're looking out from your own face. You can't see your own eyes. You can't bite your own teeth. Your tongue cannot taste itself. It's difficult, isn't it? So we need to use mindfulness to gradually turn within and to see what things are going on in there, what is happening in the mind right now. How do I respond to hearing this? How do I respond to seeing this? What happens in my mind? In what way am I bound? You can have a friend come over to you and then he starts talking to you and he says that he just won the lottery. And how do you feel about it? How do you think about it? You can observe all this. So it makes you less reactive, more settled, more grounded. You're less likely to freak out about minor things because you're able to take a step back and watch. Well, let's see what's going on here. Another thing that comes up, fear, anxiety, worries. It's right there. I can see it. Let's see what happens with it. If you're looking at a worrying state of mind, what will happen to it if you sit down and look at it? Will it stay? Will it last until the end of days? Or will it soon change? Just stay put and watch. You have the upper hand. You're not anymore ruled and overpowered by a worrisome state of mind, but you are here to see clearly that the worrisome state of mind is not made by you, not sustained by you, and it is not made to leave by you. It comes, changes, and goes all by itself. That's a fantastic discovery. If you keep repeating that discovery, you will soon notice that everything comes and goes, except for me. then your practice deepens significantly. Then you set out on the search for, well, what is it that stays? And to conclude that, you will find nothing. So this is called emptiness, and is the highest principle. This is what is entirely free of all suffering. There's no stress there, no tension, no worries. So this is what we seek. When we start out simply by recognizing, aha, there is suffering. So what's causing it? Me wanting, me not wanting is causing it. So how does it come to an end? By relaxing, letting go, right here, right now. Recognizing life. Recognizing that nothing is really worth chasing. In the deepest sense, the most beautiful thing is your own being. And in our society we are entirely misled by the idea that the beautiful is separate from you and it must be chased and it will be obtained in an uncertain future if you hopefully do the right thing. That's the great delusion of our society. But it works. It has a lot of power. Like a dream has a lot of power as long as it is unrecognized. Okay, so I think that's good enough for today. Thank you very much.